Hello there. Chapter 29 is called To Market. Remember, the night man had just left Kip in the woods. It was almost like he couldn't go any farther, so he wasn't able to get to Kip, but he left him a gift. Molly awoke the following morning to find herself in her bedroom, warm sunlight shining in through the window. She was under the covers but still dressed. Her memories of the night before were cobwebby and incomplete. She recalled following the nightman into the house, but not much after that. She ran a hand through her hair, which was twined with bits of broken leaves. Why couldn't she remember? She washed and dressed and went upstairs to prepare breakfast, resolving to find Kip the first moment she could. Master Windsor was waiting for her in the kitchen, a small bag in his hands. This is for the market, he said, not even looking her in the eye. I'm sorry it's not more. Molly took the bag of coins. She could tell without opening it that it would barely cover food for the week. You've proven you're providing for your family, sir, she said firmly. That's never something to be ashamed of. The man gave a weak smile. I pray you're right, he replied. Molly felt certain she knew where the money had come from. It alarmed her to think that the tree's provisions had lately become so paltry. Still, some money was better than none, and she set out for the village with Kip shortly after breakfast. Molly had asked her brother along because he was better with the horse, and because she hoped they might be able to talk about what they had seen in the house the night before. Kip, however, seemed to be in a more pensive mood and spoke very little as they rattled up the valley roads. After an hour of sparse conversation, they pulled onto the main road that ran through what counted as a village in Cellar Hollow. It was a small cluster of cramped buildings with thatch-roofed houses and white plaster walls. Smoke trailed up from one or two chimneys, filling the air with a pleasant fragrance that mingled with hot food, for the rows of stalls and carts that lined either side of the road. The good weather seemed to have drawn people from their farms, and the market was uncharacteristically busy that morning. People flowed between the buildings like a shambling brook. Kip parked the wagon alongside some other horses, and Molly climbed down with her basket and bag of coins. While Molly did not begrudge Bertrand's limited funds, it did make her task more difficult. The villagers knew that Molly worked for Master Windsor, whom they knew to be a wealthy man. Because of this, they seemed unwilling to haggle or bargain, and some of them even quoted higher prices to Molly as she wandered between the stalls. At the rate things were going, she would be lucky to buy enough to make soup, let alone meat. Molly picked her way through the bustle, brushing against shoulders and pushcarts and locals. She saw a few girls her age who looked to be selling milk and needlepoint pictures. Stray livestock and the occasional small child skittered under her heels. Molly closed her eyes, savoring the smell and sounds. She found it comforting to be close to so many other people, to so much life. Kip, for his part, did not seem to be enjoying the errand. He hobbled alongside her, eyes fixed on the ground. You're going to have to talk sometime, Molly said. He nodded. I know. I'm just finding the words. Slowly halting, he told her what had happened after her collapse. He told her how he had drawn the nightman away from her body, how the man had chased him all the way to the moonlit garden at the edge of the sour woods, and how, when Kip was utterly trapped, the nightman had inexplainably disappeared. I keep asking myself why he didn't hurt me, Kip said, staring into the crowd. He wanted to, I could tell. But when he came at me, something stopped him cold in his tracks, like he couldn't go no farther, he sighed. It don't make no sense. We're well past making sense, Molly said, fraying interest in some onions and she couldn't afford. For some reason, Kip had been spared by the nightman. She was grateful, but she hated the way it placed a rift between them. She peered into a barrel, looking for rotting vegetables she might be able to salvage with a paring knife. What'd you do after he let you go? Kip dipped his fingers into a bin of dried beans. I came back to the house to help you, but when I got there, it was like none of it had happened. There was no wind, No leaves, just a few muddy tracks and broken vase. You were gone, too. He looked up at her, and Molly realized for the first time just how frightened he must have been. I searched the whole house before I found you, safe in your room, sleeping soundly under the covers. Molly shuddered. Well, not too soundly. Even as she said this, she could feel her parents floating up to the surface. She could hear them screaming over the storm. She could taste the salt water. Lately, the only way she seemed to be able... Where am I at? To keep the dream at bay was to read the letters over and over again. Kip cocked his head to one side. You never told me what your nightmares was about. Molly gestured to the people around them. This isn't really the place for it. Kip took her arm and pulled her away from the stalls into the mouth of a quiet valley. Maybe it's important, he said. Maybe the dreams are a clue of some kind. Molly clicked her tongue. If you must know, my dreams are about mountains of dirty laundry and endless hallways to scrub and chamber pots as big as lakes, she smiled. Find a clue in that if you'd like. Kip smiled back, but in a hollow way that showed he didn't believe her. Molly felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Why was she lying to him? Why couldn't she just tell him the truth? She set down her basket. Kip, she said softly, I wish I knew the right thing to say. I wish I could tell you we were safe in the stables, safe at the house, but the truth is, I don't know. I don't know if we should stay and wait for Ma and Dad or run fast as we can away from that place. I'm making it up as I go, like a story, only... She swallowed. I'm not sure how this one ends. For a moment the village and market melted away, and they were standing alone. Molly stared into Kip's wide, bright eyes. She almost thought she could do it. Tell him the truth about her nightmares. Tell him about the letters and where they came from and what, in her deepest heart, she was afraid to admit that might mean. There's something I ain't told you yet, Kip said. He adjusted the grocery sack on his shoulder. The night man didn't just let me go in the woods. He left something for me. A gift. He reached into the bag and removed a small object made from twigs and leaves. Okay, what do you guys think it is? Make a prediction. What do you think it is that he left? Molly stared at the gift. It was long and thin and had a small loop at one end. Any more guesses? It's a key, she said. Aye, he ran his thumb over it, but why? And where do you think it goes? Molly swallowed, hoping her face did not betray her fear. She recognized the size and shape of that key. It was an exact replica of the key in Mistress Windsor's bedroom, the one that opened the little green door at the top of the stairs. Kip, you must listen to me. Even if you find a lock that it fits, don't ever use that key. He looked at her. You know where it goes, don't you? All I know is that a gift from that man is no gift at all. Molly could not say why, but the thought of her brother learning about the tree made her sick. Give it here. She held out her hand. You're lying. Kip inched back from her. You know, and you're not telling me. Molly snatched the key from his hand and ran past him. Give it back, he cried, struggling to follow. Molly reached the edge of the road. She threw the key as far as she could into some bushes along a ravine. This wasn't yours, Kip shouted, hobbling closer. He was panting and his voice was choked with anger. Molly felt a flush of shame, not for throwing away the key, but for outrunning him. Kip, you have to promise me. If that man tries to give you anything else, you'll get rid of it. Bury it or burn it or throw it in the river. Kip stared at the bushes, his jaws set. She bent down, taking hold of his shoulders. Promise me. A creaking voice sounded behind her. To demand promises is to invite disappointment. Molly turned around to see Hester Kettle standing next to a bread stall. She was wearing the same patchwork cloak as before, and her bundle of junk seemed to have doubled in size since they first met. On her face was a look that put Molly in mind of a spider. Hello, dearie. She stuck out a knobbly finger. You've been avoiding me. Chapter 30 is called A Story Bought, A Story Sold. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a good day.